Trump is going head to head with the woman he was found liable of sexually assaulting. Afterwards, he continued to talk about her in a way that then allowed her to sue him for defamation damages as well. And so he just, you know, Trump has a problem with his mouth, which is that he does not know how to shut it. And so he just keeps it running and running and running. And that is something that, while might help him a little bit on the campaign trail, might help him like stumping for politics, does not help you in a courtroom when the judge tells you to shut the fuck up and stop talking about the other members in the case in public. Because the judge has, in multiple instances, in multiple court cases, ordered Trump to stop talking about the defendants in the case, stop talking about the other people in the case, because they're scared that he might try to intimidate witnesses given the political situation around his run for president. If he was to release a message when somebody was going to be brought to the witness stand that could intimidate such witness, something along the lines of like, man, I'll be sure to, if he, you know, if he was to say something stupid, I would never give him help in politics again, then that can manipulate the case. And he's been getting in a lot of trouble for that. But this right here is a loss of $83 million, and he's not happy about it. We're going to read his message in reaction to this afterwards. But we're going to see I'm not going to be that surprised if we see a lot more decisions like this in the near future with Trump. I mean, 91 charges, man. 91 charges.
Coming on the air with breaking news, a jury has just reached a verdict, a ruling in the federal defamation trial against former President Donald Trump that was brought by the writer E. Jean Carroll. The former president ordered to pay $83.3 million in damages for the case. It comes months after Mr. Trump was already found liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll, who Trump mocked while he was president after she made a sexual assault claim against him. It also comes after Trump stormed out of the courtroom during closing arguments earlier today after Carroll's attorney told the jury that he's a liar and thinks, quote, the rules don't apply to him. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Break it down for us. I said that the larger sum is $83.3 million. How is that split up?
Yeah, it's split up at $7.3 million compensatory damages other than the reputation repair program. Remember, the plaintiff called in an expert to say, this is what it would cost if we started a campaign to repair Jean Carroll's reputation. So they separated.
This is the problem, is he's the president of the United States, or the former president of the United States. He might like have a big mouth that a lot of people don't take seriously. But when you're the former president of the United States, you're a billionaire, you've got this gigantic stage, the things you say about people are going to have a gigantic impact. And so if you're engaging in defamation, the amount of damage you can do is just so much larger than the damage like someone I can do. Like if I was to make up a lie about Mercado Media, right? About Mercado Media, like kidnapping small animals, you know, mostly kittens, and then reselling them, right? If I was to do that, I don't know how much I could be charged, but it would not be in the millions range.
Separated that out. The compensatory was basically pain and suffering. That was $7.3 million. And then you go to the reputation repair program, $11 million. That was right around what the plaintiff and the expert testified to, upwards of about $12 million.
And Carroll had been asking for at least $10 million.
At least $10 million, but it was right there in the range. Now we get to punitives, and punitives, Lester, are really difficult to calculate. You really never know what a jury's going to do. As a good rule of thumb,
you know, if I was Trump, and I don't know if I could argue this. Do you guys? I don't know how many of you guys watched the Destiny Ben Shapiro debate. I watched it on Twitch. I got banned, so I was gonna republish it on YouTube so you guys could watch my reaction to the debate, because I had some critiques of how, you know, Destiny and Ben handled the Ukraine conversation, but in that conversation, Ben Shapiro talked about grading Trump on a curve just due to the way that he speaks. I wonder if they could make that argument in court. Like, yes, he's the former president, but Trump often makes like bizarre and like out there and hyperbolic statements. I remember when Alex Jones, when he went to court and he started arguing like, well, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm a character. And, you know, that might be embarrassing for his show. That might be embarrassing for the public, as some people have to realize that a certain amount of what Alex Jones is doing is just performative nonsense in order to drag in viewership. It's not that crazy to think about when you see someone, you know, screaming at the top of their lungs, banging the desk, and you think, oh, yeah, some of it's performative. I wonder if Trump could argue the same thing. I doubt it. I doubt it. Because I think he really means it all seriously. And I don't know if he would be willing to say, yeah, okay, I kind of fib a little, or yeah, I exaggerate. But if I was his lawyer, I don't know. I'd at least understand it.
Anything in the 3 to 4 to 5 times multiples is probably going to get upheld on appeal. It's when you get into the 100 times the compensatory damages, the punitive damages.
Shouldn't we hold the president to a higher standard? This is what I thought during the conversation as well. He's the president of the United States. Grading the president of the United States on a curve sounds weird. I understand that if you're a teacher and you got a big class, you know, and some of the students in there are a little stupid and they drag it down, you know, grading on a curve when you're dealing with the general public, okay, I understand you might feel bad that you're lowering your standards, but it is what it is. We're talking about somebody who has weapons to end the world here. We have somebody whose words can impact international markets like that, depending on what he says. If, for example, if Trump was to come out and say freedom of navigation, more like lamigation, I'm not doing it anymore. That has an impact on international stock markets. That has an impact on trade. That has an impact on globalization. That has an impact on inflation. That has an impact on how much it costs to insure, shipping containers going around the world, no matter what nation it's flagged to. And when you take the president and you grade him on a curve, it feels like you're just ignoring all of the possible negative side effects of that person being president, which Donald Trump displayed by, for example, playing down COVID and saying, oh, what? It's going to come to America? Nah, don't worry about it. The heat will deal with the COVID. And then after wasn't properly prepared, after he downplayed it and told Americans not to worry, it not only became a health crisis, but it became an economic crisis as well. And so I do think that people take hints from the president of the United States, not only American constituents, but other people as well, people outside of the United States. In fact, we have good reason to believe that Donald Trump's statements on the campaign trail about the war in Ukraine and Donald Trump's history in office has led the Russians to try to organize their strategy around, partially at least with this contingent in mind, Donald Trump getting elected, with Sergei Shoigu saying they need to fight until early 2025. And I think that's in part because they have been given the implication, even if Trump was to 180 once he's in office, and he has a history of doing that, he has given them the implication that, oh, you know, they're very smart over there. He's constantly complimenting Putin and talking about he can make a deal in 24 hours. The only way he can make a deal with 24 hours and know he could do that is, or at least believe he knows he can do that, is that he'd be willing to negotiate over the heads of the Ukrainians. And that's something that that does worry me. But that's something that I think through his words, the Russians have taken. And whether or not he becomes president, he has decreased American deterrence and he's decreased our negotiating position, because whether or not he gets elected in the future, right now, the Russians believe that's power that they have, leverage that they know in a year they could switch up to somebody who might be a much weaker negotiator with much less experience in foreign policy. And that's the effect Trump's words has. So I don't want to grade him on a curve, because it's not like when he hurts the country that's going to hit us or affect us on a curve. If inflation gets out of control, they're not going to do that on a curve and lower it just because, oh, he had a stupid president, so we're going to, treat you guys better. God's going to be nicer to us. No, he won't.
Might get overturned or reduced when they go up on appeal. This is right within the range, and it is within the range of what the plaintiffs were looking for in terms of compensatory damages. The punitives appear to be roughly, and I'm not good at math, but about 4 times the compensatory damages. That's right in the range that I think an appellate court would uphold. But make no mistake about it, the Trump team will appeal this, as they often do any adverse rulings.
Okay, now I have an idea of where the Trump team is. They're not happy, but to get a better idea of where the Trump team is, as he's lost $83 million, mind you. Now, $83 million is $83 million, and when you hear like Donald Trump's former president of the United States, billionaire, it's like, oh, he could scrape up that money. But I want to remind you guys that part of the reason why Trump is having so many people flip against him, and these cases against him are getting more and more serious, with former staffers, former campaign advisors, former advisors during the administration officials, all of these people flipping and then talking to prosecutors, giving evidence. The people, the reason this is happening is because Well, in part, it's because he just burns everyone. But part of that burning everyone is that he promised a lot of them, once they took legal risks in order to assist him, that he would cover their legal damages. You remember that that time that guy was in the audience and there was a protester and he said, grab his coat, throw him out of here, I'll cover your legal bills. That is how he deals with any time someone does something for him illegal. Don't worry, I'll cover it. And when it came to this instance, though, he couldn't cover it all, either because he didn't want to or because he couldn't. And so a lot of people stopped having their court costs getting covered by Trump. And then that's when they flipped, because they just couldn't afford it. So $83 million in damages. I don't know exactly how much Donald Trump is worth, but if he's cutting all these people loose, I do think it'll have an effect at least.
Ask me that question.
Now, this is Trump's lawyer. She's coming out to talk to the press and to spar with them.
Ask me that question. No, I'm not.
She's very interesting, by the way. She's perfect Trump lawyer material.
Having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I am having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have.
Wow.
I have not spoken.
I have never seen such a miscarriage of justice, ever. Except for that time we let our, the guy I'm representing get away with sexually assaulting the woman who is charging him with defamation. I'm sorry. I'm gonna lip out a little bit today. I'm lipping out.
Because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York.
So I wonder how much Trump actually considers like the legal credibility or like legal experience of the person when he chooses his lawyer. Definitely now, where I feel like the Trump cult and the like quote unquote rational adults in the room are less and less. Whether he picked her because, and I'm just thinking openly here, I'm just being honest, whether he picked her because like hot woman, picked her because, well, she could do a decent campaign speech, or if he was actually considering her legal qualities whatsoever, like her actual lawyer qualities. I don't know.
In this state, the state of New York, Attorney General Letitia James, and now this.
By the way, I would usually not say that about anyone, but we're talking about Donald Trump here, and he's pretty open about his proclivities.
Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't.
Also, the other reason why I would be willing to say that is instead of making any legal argument, she's just saying, my candidate's been prosecuted. I can't believe the legal system of New York. I can't believe they would rule against me.
What you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom. I'm not finished. Let me just finish and I'll take questions, please. Before I walked into court, that judge decided that every single defense President Trump had, we were not allowed to raise in front of the jury. It is in writing, and I encourage the journalists, the real journalists, to...
I'm sorry. Okay. Look, I'm not taking her too serious. I'm just imagining, like, so... Can we try that it was really funny, the defamation? No, that doesn't work. Okay. What if, have you looked at the defendant? Have you looked at the defendant's puppy eye? No? Okay. Have we mentioned that Carroll is ugly? No? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't take Trump's legal defenses seriously anymore when they've started to amount to, hey, the president is immune. He can commit all the crimes. Because he's the president. The president is allowed to commit any crime in office. And he said, and I mean this literally, he's allowed to be a road cop. You have to allow it. He has to have the power. Which, if that's the case, that the president can commit any crime while in office and you can't do anything, what would stop, for example, Obama from using the intelligence apparatus from spying on Trump? What would stop, for example, Joe Biden to say, this Donald Trump guy is giving us too much campaign trouble. Let's put him at the bottom of the Mississippi. like if you take this to its logical conclusion, right, it doesn't make any sense, and it breaks down the checks and balances around the president. Why did the Nixon scandal even exist if the president can commit any crime he wants? Why was it even a question about impeaching Nixon? Why did Nixon leave office? He could have just been like, I'm the president, I can do whatever I want.
Take the minute to look at his orders. There was no proof. And I couldn't prove that she didn't bring in the dress. There was no DNA. There was no expert. My experts were denied.
So the thing that's interesting about the case around her and the sexual assault is that this was not a case to find out if Donald Trump was criminally guilty. This has to do with New York law. It's criminally guilty around sexually assaulting this woman because, you know, it's been years since then, and I think the statute of limitations has already been passed anyway. What the liability case was about is whether the court has good enough reason to believe that it's basically probably true. That, like, if they were to look at this case, they could say, yeah, he probably did it. He probably sexually assaulted her, like 60, 70, 80% chance, which is different than, you know, criminal liability, because you need to be very certain if you're going to be putting somebody behind bars. But he was found liable for sexual assault. The court said that it is likely that he sexually assaulted this woman. But yeah, it was about liability, not criminal liability, and the standards of evidence are different.
Two of them were denied to come in. They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman.
What the fuck are you talking about? What I'm talking about is that civil liability in New York law for these types of cases, there is something on the books that allows victims to bring these cases against perpetrators years later for civil liability. But that's not the same as criminal liability. Civil liability is when you're, you know, basically you bring them out in public and you have this case and you can prove, you don't prove 100% that they did it, but you prove that they probably did it, and then you can get things like, you know, damages and other things as well with that in order to get some recompense. But it's still different than putting them behind bars.
They didn't let me bring up that Reid Hoffman funded Miss Kaplan. And you know what we got in there? That my witness, who was her friend, who said that she is a drug addict and the drug addict is herself. That friend, I found out in there, was paid for by Miss Kaplan's firm, and that is disgusting. That is a violation of everything I stand for, and that is why I stand with Trump. And that is why so many Americans are so proud that he is running again and so excited to run to the ballot box. But don't get it twisted. We are seeing a violation of our justice system, ladies and gentlemen.
So the strategy is for them is to run out the clock. They are facing 91 charges from like 4 or 5 different cases, and they're scrambling across the country trying to deal with all these court cases. And I'm only talking about the ones that come with like some level of like criminal liability. But point is, they're in a really difficult legal position, and a lot of these cases they're not going to win. And what I mean by win is they're not going to prove their innocence. The documents case is so clear cut. It's so bad. There's no way to maneuver around that, especially considering Trump's hypocrisy on the documents case. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Donald Trump, for those of you who don't know about the background around the case, he, while at the end of his office, as he was, you know, getting kicked out and he was trying to fight tooth and nail to make it so even if he lost the election, he could stay in office, he started to make a bunch of requests to declassify documents so they could take him with him. But he kind of just gave up halfway, and a bunch of the documents that he didn't even go through the process of declassifying, he took with him anyway down to his resort in Mar-a-Lago and stored them in not the best conditions. Now, this alone is not enough to like put Donald Trump behind bars. There has been instances where presidents have been found to have classified documents at their house or other staffers way after the fact, and the National Archives will come in, they'll request them, they'll get them, and they'll clean it up, right? Because if you're the president of the United States or a staffer, you're not going to be inside the White House or inside the National Archives every time you look at a classified document. You got to be on the move. You got to go around. You're an American bureaucrat, one of the most powerful countries in the world. You got to be out there and get it. But the problem was that once the National Archives found out about these documents and they requested them, he just said, Huh? I don't know what you're talking about. And pretended that he didn't have the documents. And then after he pretended he didn't have the documents, he had his staffers go to the documents, turn off his security cameras, and hide them at another location in Mar-a-Lago to try to, like, break the smell, kind of break the trace with the National Archives. He gave them some of the documents back, but kept others. He was actively disobeying the law here and actively trying to avoid the National Archives trying to get these classified documents. And nobody can tell me that he didn't know what he was doing, because we do have audio now, and this is why I say it's the most clear cut, where he's showing people without clearance to see these still classified documents. He's showing them just openly to reporters without clearance. And not only is he showing it openly to reporters without clearance, we have good reason to believe from the tone of the conversation that it had to do with invasion plans. Invasion plans of Iran, possible war plans if we were to go to war with Iran. So when we're talking about classified documents, we're talking about the cream of the crop of classified documents here. Now, this is the case that is against Trump. And on that audio, he's literally saying, I could have declassified this. I didn't. Here you go. Be quiet about it. It's not great audio. It's not a great case. He is not going to win that case with a judge coming forward and saying, everything's good here, everything's fine. But the reason why it's so cosmically, horrifically funny is that while in office, he actually, in response to Hillary Clinton's email scandal and other scandals around classification of documents and storage of documents and, cybersecurity, stuff like that, he decided to increase the penalties for violations of the Presidential Records Act, which is the exact same law he would then go on to violate while taking these documents and bringing them to his home and then lying about it. So not only did he violate the law, he violated a law that he increased the penalty for. This would be like if I came out and I was like, nobody is allowed to drive dune buggies, and then a week later you just see me going wee, just driving dune buggies all around. Remember the Chris Christie scandal where he shut down the beach and then his family went and just relaxed on the beach? This is that, but the documents version of it. And not only did he stand by the penalties before the law, he increased the penalties before the law. So it's not like he wasn't aware of the law. It's not like he didn't know that it existed. And the National Archives made sure he was aware of it as well. So it's not only hypocritical, it's just very stupid. But Donald Trump did respond to this decision on Truth Social, the platform of truth, that's why it's called Truth Social, saying, absolutely ridiculous. I fully disagree with both verdicts and will be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt. Let me be clear. The defamation case by the woman that he was found liable of sexually assaulting is not a Biden witch hunt. Biden has no control over whether or not Jean Carroll sues for defamation or what she does with her own private lawyer. This is her case. This is not Biden's case. The Biden DOJ has no involvement with this. He's just, in Donald Trump's mind, every legal problem he runs into, there's just Joe Biden in the background puppeteering it all. And we'll be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party. Our legal system is out of control and being used as a political weapon. Again, it's a defamation case. They have taken away all the First Amendment rights. Defamation is not covered by the First Amendment. This is not America. Can I just throw out there that one last level of irony to this? Didn't Donald Trump, while running for office, say he wanted to lower the standards for defamation, make it easier? And free speech advocates were like, wait a second, let's be careful here. This is, First Amendment's very, important, and we don't want to lower the standards for something like that. We want to keep the standards high. And he wanted to lower it because he didn't like how the press talked about him. Very interesting how the turns have tabled.